Right, so picture this, Burkina Faso, a nation in West Africa, dealing with some pretty serious stuff. We're talking instability, armed groups causing chaos, the whole 9 yards. And then, onto this very complicated stage, steps a young military officer. Not a seasoned politician with decades of experience, not a household name, but Captain Ibrahim Traoré. His rise wasn't exactly in the political playbook, you know? It was more like a surprise plot twist in a movie that keeps you on the edge of your seat. The Sahel region, where Burkina Faso is located, has unfortunately become a bit of a hotspot for jihadist insurgencies. These aren't just small-time troublemakers, these are organized groups linked to big international networks like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. For Burkina Faso, this meant soldiers and civilians were losing their lives, and vast areas of the country were becoming no-go zones. So, when Ibrahim Traoré emerged, it was a significant moment. He wasn't just another military figure, he represented a younger generation, perhaps a more radical approach to tackling the nation's deep-seated problems. His arrival signaled a clear message: the old ways weren't working and a new, bolder direction was needed. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how Captain Traoré came to power. It all went down on September 30th, 2022. This was a full-blown military coup. Traoré and soldiers decided that Lieutenant Colonel Damiba wasn't cutting it. The main reason? The security situation was a disaster. They felt Damiba hadn't made enough progress against jihadist groups. Ibrahim Traoré, at 34, became the world's youngest head of state. Traoré and his junta made key promises, with security as the top priority. When Captain Traoré took the reins, Burkina Faso's security situation was, to put it mildly, pretty grim. We're talking about a country where armed jihadist groups, some linked to Al-Qaeda and others to the Islamic State, had gained control over significant chunks of territory. These groups weren't just hiding out, they were actively attacking army positions, terrorizing villages, and making normal life impossible for countless citizens. The previous government had struggled to contain this escalating violence, and the sense of urgency was palpable. So, what did Traoré's administration do? Well, they didn't hang about. The Burkinabe military, under its new leadership, significantly ramped up its operations against these extremist factions. This wasn't just about defending existing positions, it was about going on the offensive, aiming to push back the insurgents and reclaim those areas that had fallen under their sway. A key part of Traoré's security strategy involved getting the local communities more directly involved in their own defense. He heavily promoted and expanded the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, VDPs in French. The impact of these intensified security efforts has been a subject of ongoing assessment. Beyond the immediate security crisis, Captain Traoré's government also turned its attention to Burkina Faso's economy, which, let's be honest, was facing its own set of serious challenges. The new leadership seemed to believe that a fundamental rethink was needed, particularly concerning how the nation's natural wealth was being managed and who was truly benefiting from it. One of the most striking economic moves was in the lucrative mining sector, especially gold. Burkina Faso is a significant gold producer, but for years there's been a feeling that the profits were disproportionately flowing out of the country or into the pockets of a select few. Traoré's administration took some bold steps here, including the nationalization of at least 2 gold mines and placing limits on gold exports, particularly to Europe. The rationale behind these mining reforms was quite straightforward: to ensure that the revenues generated from the country's mineral wealth would be channeled back into the national treasury and used for the benefit of the broader population. Beyond the headline-grabbing mining reforms, other economic measures were also put on the table. The goal is economic sovereignty, a tough but crucial ambition. Now let's talk about something absolutely fundamental to any country, but especially to one like Burkina Faso: agriculture. This isn't just a sector of the economy, it's a way of life for a huge portion of the population. Given the ongoing conflict which has displaced farmers and disrupted planting seasons, shoring up agriculture became a critical priority for Captain Traoré's administration. They recognized that you can't build a strong nation on empty stomachs. The government announced several measures aimed at giving the agricultural sector a much-needed boost. This included things like providing subsidies for farmers, which could help them afford seeds, fertilizers, and other essential inputs. There were also support programs designed to improve farming techniques and increase yields. The overarching goals of these agricultural policies were pretty clear. Firstly, to improve food security. Secondly, these efforts aim to enhance rural livelihoods, providing better incomes and opportunities for farming communities. It's about planting the seeds today for a more prosperous and peaceful tomorrow. When Captain Traoré and his colleagues took power, they didn't just focus on guns and gold, they also had to think about the political landscape. One of the first things they did was establish a transitional government. This is pretty standard practice after a coup. You set up an interim administration to run the country while, supposedly, preparing for a return to normal democratic processes. The initial promise, as is often the case, was that this military-led phase would be temporary, a necessary step to stabilize the nation before handing power back to civilians. A significant plank of their political agenda was a crackdown on corruption. The junta launched several anti-corruption initiatives, vowing to hold people accountable and clean up the system. However, the path of political transition hasn't been entirely straightforward. In May 2024, a significant announcement came. The military rule, initially set for a shorter period, was to be extended by 5 years. This decision understandably raised eyebrows and concerns, both within Burkina Faso and internationally. Maintaining some level of cooperation with ECOWAS and demonstrating a commitment, even if longer term, to eventual civilian rule, is crucial for regional stability and international legitimacy. Under Captain Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso is charting a new course in international relations. A strong stance against neo-colonialism, particularly directed at France, has been prominent. Traoré's government demands the withdrawal of French troops and asserts national sovereignty. Burkina Faso strengthens ties with Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel States. This alliance focuses on mutual defense and cooperation against jihadist insurgencies. Burkina Faso prioritizes its own national interests, adopting a non-aligned stance. So, what do the people of Burkina Faso actually think about Captain Ibrahim Traoré and his leadership? Well, from many accounts, he enjoys a significant amount of popular support, especially considering he came to power via a coup, not an election. This backing seems to stem largely from his strong, uncompromising stance on security and his vocal promises to tackle corruption head-on. His appeal is particularly strong among the youth of Burkina Faso. This is a country with a very young population, and many young people feel that previous generations of leaders have failed them. They see Traoré, himself a young man, as a symbol of a fresh start, a break from the old political class that they might view as out of touch or self-serving. His defiance against perceived foreign interference and his rhetoric about national pride resonate deeply with a generation eager to see their country stand tall and control its own destiny. This popularity isn't just about Traoré's personal charisma, though. It's also fueled by a deep-seated frustration with the perceived failures of previous elected governments. However, it's also important to acknowledge that this support might not be universal or unconditional. Looking ahead, Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso face a path that is, to put it mildly, strewn with challenges. The biggest tightrope walk will be balancing the undeniable, urgent need to improve security across the nation with the long-term commitment to democratic reforms and an eventual return to civilian governance. The primary threat from jihadist groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State remains very real and very dangerous. These groups are entrenched, adaptable, and continue to pose a severe risk to human life and state authority. Simply defeating them militarily is a monumental task. Beyond the bullets and bombs, there are the underlying socioeconomic conditions, poverty, lack of opportunity, and sometimes a sense of marginalization that can fuel extremism and make recruitment easier for these groups. Addressing these root causes is just as crucial as any military campaign for achieving lasting peace. Regional organizations like the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, and the African Union, or AU, have a vital role to play. Their engagement, support, and sometimes pressure will be important in helping Burkina Faso navigate its complex transition. Ultimately, Captain Traoré's legacy will be shaped by whether he can genuinely secure Burkina Faso, both physically from insurgents and politically and economically from undue foreign interference.